candidates, and welcome back to my channel. Long time no see, no talk, no film, no nothing. My life has been nothing shy of crazy. The semester started back, been real sleepy and sluggish because I'm overworked and underpaid and getting a whole graduate degree, and I went back to teaching, and I'm trying to keep up with the blog post, but if y'all haven't noticed, I've been slacking. So yeah, I wanted to come on here today and I wanted to get real with y'all. The title of today's video, as you can see, is I love God and I pray, but I'm still depressed. And this month on the blog, I've been really kind of trying to focus on what it looks like to be an adult and what adulting really looks like and how godly adulting can take place and all of those things. And it's great and it's hunky-dory, but at the end of the day, if we're honest with ourselves, we're all just a bunch of really grown children trying to be adults, if that makes any sense. I think we all go through depressed seasons, regardless of if we want to admit it or not. When you lose somebody that's close to you, it's going to affect you in a certain kind of way, as it should. And if it doesn't, depression might not be your thing, but narcissism may be, I really wanted to talk about this because I think there's a culture, right, that says that you could just pray away your sorrow. You could pray away your hard times. You could pray away everything. And I'm not doubting God, but I am saying that due to our makeup and the circumstances that we have today, sometimes we need to go beyond our knees and start putting feet to faith. And so what that looks like, it looks different for different people, right? But if you have a chemical imbalance and you are depressed because your brain is not producing the correct hormones as it should, you need to see a doctor. And you're not going to know that until you see a doctor. And it's not fair to the people around you that you go untreated, and it's not fair to yourself. And so I wanted to share a bit of my own story, and I wanted to share how the Lord vindicated me and really kind of share with you ultimately what I believe we all can do to help each of us help ourselves, but then help the people around us, because mental illness is real, you guys, and depression is just the tip of the iceberg. I honestly believe that depression is connected to so many different mental illnesses, but if we don't even want to address the depression, we'll never know half the things that affect us, and thus people will be walking around here sick and jaded, and we'll keep acting as though the world is falling apart and we need more Jesus. But in all actuality, Jesus has given us all of himself. We just need to tap into the wisdom and connect that wisdom with his power. So I dealt with depression for a long period of my life, and I would walk around for a long time and try to act like there was no problem, but I didn't understand at the time, especially being a kid, the ramifications of those actions, right? And so the way that depression works is depression likes misery, and depression, if not properly addressed, can keep coming back over and over and over, and you'll realize that you've created a cycle of pain that's holding you back from being the best version of yourself. My mother deployed in 11th grade, and that was just a sunken place, and I stayed in that sunken place until I was 19, 20 years old. So from age 15 to age 19, 20. And it's not saying that like every day you're down, you know what I'm saying? Like some days you have good days, some days you have bad days. But when your bad days start to outweigh your good days, that's a time of depression. It's a sorrowful time. And then again, when I was 21, that was probably the hardest, and that was my last, and I pray to God it stays my last, because that's the lowest I've ever been. That is the worst of the worst. I was my heaviest I've ever been physically in my body. I began to gain weight. I would eat anything, even if I was allergic to it. I didn't care. I was self-hating. It's just a whole lot. But the moral of the story is my symptoms, right? I wasn't taking care of myself. I was extremely unhealthy. I was gaining weight again, like I said, like leaps and bounds. I was withdrawn. I had mood swings. I was playing Russian roulette with my emotions. Honestly, like one minute I'd be fine, the next minute I'm like ghost. My eating habits were all over the place. I would go through periods where I wouldn't eat for like 3 days, and then I would go through other periods where I would just binge for 3 days. I finally got to a point where I was having these attacks, panic attacks, spiritual attacks, physical attacks all at the same time. My heart would be beating out of my chest, and I thought I was dying. And I would just cry and cry and cry uncontrollably for reasons that don't even make that big of a deal, right? But there was this weight on me that I couldn't carry in myself. And I loved God through my entire life. I've prayed through my entire life. In the lowest of low, I knew where my help came from. I called on him, and I felt like I didn't hear nothing back. And I think it's naive to believe that people can just pray it away, right? And the Lord would immediately come when you tell him to come. He does say knock and the door will be answered, but he didn't say how long you had to knock. Even look at like through Jeremiah, right? Even if you look at Lamentations 3, okay? In Lamentations 3, Jeremiah is going through whatever he's going through, and he talks about how he's in anguish, he's in distress, he's in the dark place, and how the Lord put him there. The Lord made a mockery of him, put him into bitterness and sorrow, and just really put him into this place where he felt alone. And honestly, that's depression. Like, it takes its shape in many different ways, but nonetheless, it's depression, right? Everything's not gonna be hunky-dory. It's not always going to be easy for us, particularly because we are believers. It's going to be very difficult for us. So, in that space, right, we can't just call God and make God do anything. But even in our prayer, David did it. Jeremiah is doing it here. Even in our prayer, it's all right to tell God that you're alone. It's all right to voice the pain that you feel and know that it might not just go away. You know what I'm saying? Like in this verse, the part that I really, really like, he says, I dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin anew every morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, and therefore I will hope in him. And understand that, like, just because you affirm that doesn't mean that the sadness is gone, doesn't mean that the crying stops. It just means you have hope at the end of the tunnel. But you can be a Christ follower. You can love Jesus. You can pray. You can fast and still be depressed. It happens. It's okay. And I don't think it's anything for us to act like it's super taboo either. Honestly, if we get out of this mindset that it's so taboo, people could get healing out here in these streets. The most miserable people I know, unfortunately, are Christians because they are not willing to tell the truth to themselves, to God, or to anybody else. And how do we expect people to overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony if we're too ashamed to even be honest about how we feel? I mean, feelings is the one thing that you're allowed to just be reckless with. And you can't even be reckless about your feelings anymore because people don't want to be honest. The pain that I felt, the deep sorrow that I felt brought me closer to God, but it didn't make the depression go away. God ultimately, I believe, cured my depression. But it didn't happen in that moment when I cried out. It didn't happen the next day. It didn't happen in 6 months. It took me years. I am 24 years old. And I am finally at a place. And I've only been at this place not very long, to be honest. Maybe a year. Where I can say I am no longer depressed. I have found some level of contentment, some level of freedom, some level of joy that combats the depression, right? But that doesn't mean that I don't have depressed moments. because things happen and I'm allowed to feel them. If I don't feel them, I'm going to end up going back down into a web, into a tornado that messes up my entire life. I've dealt with it for so long, and to finally come to a place where I've been okay for like 2-ish years, give or take. Um, it took a lot of work, it took a lot of effort, but we're here. So, this is what I did to get myself out of depression, right? The first thing I had to do was keep praying and keep fasting and understand that it's not God that's doing this to me. God is a permissive God and He allows things to happen, but I can't be mad at Him. I mean, I was mad at Him for a long time over a lot of things, but I still served Him faithfully. I still loved Him. I still did everything that He told me to do. I just had a grievance with Him. And I didn't even know I had the grievance. And I had to make peace and understand that I'm not God. He's God. So I can't tell Him what to do. I can't tell Him what amount of pain is allowable in my life. That's not how this works. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need to seek help, right? I believe firmly that everybody should have a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist. If you need a psychiatrist, then get a psychiatrist as well. The difference between psychologists and psychiatrists will prescribe you medication. I think it's important to have a therapist regardless of how you might feel or who you might have to talk to. Your spouse signs up to be your partner, but doesn't sign up to be your punching bag. Your brother, sister, and everybody else doesn't sign up to be your target practice. So go to a therapist and ensure that you can be open and honest with that therapist to really bleed all over the therapist. I have this analogy, and I got it from a Bible study that I was taking. The gentleman said, you don't want to enter into a relationship like a turkey uncooked, where you start to bleed all out over everyone. But I take it a step further. You don't want to bleed over anybody in any of your relationships. And if you're hurt, there's a certain level to you that's uncooked. Every time you get hurt, there's internal bleeding, regardless of if you want to acknowledge it or not. It doesn't matter how deep the wound is, it causes a certain level of internal bleeding, bruising, cutting flesh open, you know what I'm saying? And I strive, and I firmly believe we should all strive to never bleed all over the people that we care about and the people that God put in our lives. So go see a therapist, even if it's just to tell the therapist that you're okay, you know? It's all right to have a therapist to just go and be like, I'm okay today, you know? I'm feeling good today. Those are the best sessions, I believe, because it begins to pull things out of you and allow you to recognize the good days over the bad days. And it's equally as important to go and be like, I'm having a really, really bad day and I'm not okay. And I need to talk it through and I need to just get it out. And that, I think everybody needs a therapist. Therapists are extremely undervalued. They are more important than your physical doctor, to be honest, than your PCP, because your therapist ensures that your mind, which is governed by your heart and everything, is right. To this point, I don't believe that everybody should have a Christian therapist if that's not something that they're looking for. If you're a Christian and that's something that you require, then go for it. But I've had many therapists who are not Christians, and I've only had issues with one. And my relationship with those therapists thrived because I'm getting a second opinion, an outside perspective. And sometimes you need that. God can use even a donkey. So how much more could He use a willing individual who's been trained to hear your problems? The third thing is you got to be honest. You know what I'm saying? You can keep praying and you can see a therapist, but if you're not being honest in both those things, you're going to lack and you're going to continue to have issues and you're going to continue to be depressed because you're not handling the situation completely. You're still lying to yourself, you're still lying to God, and you're still lying to the people around you about what it is that you're going through. So be honest and be open. You know, transparency goes a long way. I think transparency is a part of honesty, to be honest. if you're not transparent, particularly with your therapist and with God, they can't do anything with that, right? I'm filming in between my class sessions, you guys. So the next point is, on top of being honest, right? A whole part of honesty is doing the soul searching, right? And I think that's really what honesty is. Doing the soul searching, and then after you do the soul searching, being willing to talk about it with either your therapist or Jesus or yourself or all three. I think it's important to kind of do all three and understand that, like, the soul searching isn't easy. I want to briefly talk about what soul searching looks like because it looks different for everyone. But for me, I have this internal dialogue, whether through a journaling process, audible prayer, like in my heart prayer, in my mind prayer, and or just out loud. Sometimes I have to really talk to myself out loud, which sounds crazy, but as long as you don't answer yourself, you're good, right? That's the going joke. So just so long as you're actively having those conversations and discovering new things about yourself. Like, some people need conversations with other people to do that. I don't. I think it's, if you do that with a therapist, um, not just random people out here, because then you're gonna feel like everybody knows your business and you're being vulnerable with everyone, which is not what you're meant to do either. You're supposed to guard your heart. So it takes a certain level of that soul searching in order for me to realize something. Once I've realized that, I can then be honest about it with myself and with God and with my therapist, and then get healing for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, finding your healing, finding that and walking in that and picking that up and dropping off. It says to lay down your flesh daily and to pick up your cross. A part of that is what I'm talking about. Laying down your hurt and your pain and your disdain and all of that, and picking up joy, peace, healing, patience, and all of the above. That right there, it hits different. So I know this video was a bit much, but I hope you guys got something from it. It was important for me to really make this video because of the times that we're in. COVID is still here and it's out and it's real. People are tired of being in the house. People are hurting. People are depressed in ways that they didn't know possible because they've never had to take the time to really evaluate who they are. And now you're left with all this free time, and if you don't have social media telling you what to do, you got just the people living in your house telling you what to do. And if you don't have nobody living in your house, then you got the thoughts in your head telling you what to do. And now we're all in a place where, if we didn't have depression before, a lot of us are tiptoeing in it. And for those of us who thankfully have gotten healing and stuff like that, I think it's our job to really tell our brothers and sisters what it looks like to get healing for themselves, and to know that you can be a Christian and be depressed. It's okay. God is still good even if you're depressed. God is still faithful even if you're depressed. And I hold firm to this verse. I will read it one more again, but I want you to insert whatever it is that you're dealing with. For me, I'm not depressed right now, but I'm going through a down season, right? And I think that's just because we're in the house, and I'm actually in this house by myself right now. And so I've been dealing with loneliness, and that loneliness has stirred up some of those feelings, not to a point where I can say I'm depressed, but I'm just going through something right now. And so I speak this over my life, and I hope that you guys speak it in yours, and just insert whatever it is for yourself. So it says, again, we're looking at Lamentations 3:22 through 24, and it says, "The faithful love of the Lord never ends." Right? So for me, it continues, it goes on beyond my comprehension, but beyond anything that I could ever face. It is full in me, it is alive in me, it is everything for me, to me, everything that I need. His mercies never cease. And even in my loneliness, even in my disdain, even when I'm mad at him, even when I feel as though I want to be him and I try to take his place, or I let something else sit on the throne of my heart, or I'm being bitter, or I'm being childish, or I just don't feel like doing anything. I want to throw in the towel, even when I'm at my wit's end, even when I feel like nobody loves me, even when I feel like I don't love myself. His mercies never end because his love is ever enduring. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin anew every morning because he's good. He's great. He is beyond word. When we think of great, right? We can be talking about magnitude, right? So how big something physically is, or we could be talking about attribute and how good or how awesome something is. You know what I'm saying? So we could be talking about how great he is, how great his faithfulness is, even in the seasons when I'm unfaithful, even in the seasons when I doubt him, even in the moments where I don't think, I begin to put my flesh ahead of him. He is yet faithful, but great is his faithfulness as well because of who he is, right? He's a good, good father in the words of the song, but he's also a great, great God. And so his faithfulness continues to pour out in such a way that he is awesome. He is magnificent. He is beyond any word that we could ever come up with. He's greater than all those things because of not only his love, but his faithfulness in his love, his faithfulness to love, right? It goes on to say his mercies begin anew every morning. And every morning I wake up and I wake up in sin because I'm human. And every day that I forget to carry my cross, his mercies are still there. Every day that I remember to carry my cross, his mercies are still there. Every day that my problem hasn't changed, his mercy is still there. Every day that the depression seems to want to get thick, his mercies are still there. Every day that I wake up is a blessing, but every miracle that he does, I just have to open my eyes to see. And I'm not going to sit up here and minimize God and be like, well, miracles when he woke me up this morning, because honey, I believe in a great God. The miraculous blows minds. The miraculous leaves me speechless. So while I'm grateful that I woke up this morning because God is always good, he's great because of the things that I can't convey to you in words. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, therefore I will hope in him. Another translation says, I will wait in him. And that speaks for itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Lord is my inheritance. Another version says he's my portion. He's everything I need and more and some. And honey, you gonna still walk through the fire, but know that you can't gain an inheritance if you don't walk through it. You still gonna be in the valley, but you can't get back to the mountaintop if you don't walk through it. You can still be in the desert land, but he is your provider of your source of water, your source of food, your source of protection, your source of peace. I mean, let's be honest. All my single people, he's your portion of comfort. He's your portion of love. He's your portion of companionship. He's all of those things, right? Right? He's your inheritance. Stop. And this is a whole aside. Like, not just single people, married people, everybody. Stop looking at God as Santa Claus. He's not Santa Claus. We've already reaped the inheritance. We have salvation. Walk in it. Act like it. Stop thinking that the marriage or the child or the job or the money is the inheritance. That's not the inheritance. Those things are fleeting. And while God is, again, good for all of those things, he's great for the things we can't explain. We can't explain salvation, honey. If you really take a moment and try to, we know what it means for us, but we cannot explain what it means in the supernatural. We cannot explain what it does for our souls because nobody's been to heaven and come back. I mean, we have books and things, but we have revelations and things, but all those things have nuances. There's no formula to heaven. There's no formula for salvation, really. It's just acceptance. That's not a formula, that's a variable. And because of all those things, it says, therefore I will hope in him. And like I said, the other translation said, I will wait in him. Because depression is real, y'all. And we be at the bottom. We be at the very bottom. And you might not be at rock bottom, but depression is very, very real. And we just need a sliver of hope. And that sliver of hope, for me, turned into another good day, which turned into another good day, which turned to another good day. To now my good days outweigh my bad days. And when I have bad days, I know what to do in order to ensure that I have good days. I have hope in the giver of life, in the giver of peace, in the giver of restoration. And for that, y'all, he speechless, you see? Have no words. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it to this point, I really pray that this video touched you guys and it really encouraged you guys. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. I mean, if you don't do anything else, just share it with somebody who needs it. We are all in this time together. We're all in this thing together. And COVID has been rough. 2020 as a whole has been rough. There's racial tension. There's COVID tension. There's people jobless. There's people with no money. There's people with no homes. But know that we have hope. And even though we pray, the next day might not be perfect, but it's good enough to get you to the next and the next and the next. So have hope, guys. Understand where your hope comes from. For those who have never accepted Jesus into your heart, all you have to do is say a prayer, and the prayer goes like this: Jesus, I believe you died on the cross. I believe that you did so for the forgiveness of my sin, and I accept you. Now be with me, Lord, as I walk this journey with you. Teach me what you would have me to know. And I confess that I'm a sinner and I am no longer, because I now accept who you are. And it's just that simple. So until the next video, you guys, love you guys. Bye.